You know those files that didn't exist? Well, it turns out that they did, surprise to no one. And guess who appears in them? Mr. Bill Gates. He appears in newly released photos from Epstein's estate. And we'll see a clip here of Bill talking about how, he regrets having those dinners. He just had a few dinners. It wasn't a big deal. He was, interviewed quite a few times and asked about this question. And he just writes it off like it wasn't a big deal. He went to a few dinners. But now what do we see here? This picture with Bill Gates. We can see the description here is an undated photograph from Epstein's estate with Bill Gates and a pilot released on December 12th, 2025 by the House Oversight Committee as a part of the supposed files that don't even exist, right? But then now they do exist. And then they're a Democrat conspiracy, and then they're real and they're here. So it's like still not getting any truth on that because so many people involved in this are on these lists or connected. Just like Mr. Bill here. So it turns out it wasn't just a few dinners, a few dinner meetings that Bill had. He's flying on these airplanes with him and probably going to the island. Here's Bill kind of trying to write it off. This was from 2021 when this information was kind of being released. And here he is, and his response wasn't a big deal. It was just a few meetings.
And, I've said I regretted having those dinners. And there's absolutely nothing new on that.
Is there a lesson for you, for anyone else looking at this?
Well, he's dead. So, in general, you always have to be careful.
He was grilled on this by multiple interviews, in this interview multiple times. He just says the same thing. I had a few dinners. It wasn't a big deal. We really didn't do much. Well, it turns out he was actually flying. Where to? Probably the island with Jeffrey. And that was another picture from his estate. I want to play something here that, Bill Gates, it turns out, is not that nice of a guy, as many people know. But here's some information of some people who worked really closely with him in Microsoft and how Bill was trying to write out one of the main guys who helped found Microsoft, the co-founder. And when he found out that this guy had cancer, here's what Bill's response was and what he was trying to do behind this guy's back.
You never understood the first thing about this. That's ridiculous. I'm not using this thing. No. Somebody's confused. Somebody's just not thinking. I mean, there's no way.
We'll figure it out.
You had to fight back intensely to stand your ground and make your position and your convictions expressed.
But he didn't like to back down. So these fights would go on, you said. They could go on for hours.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We're just screaming at each other for hours?
And it's exhausting. It's exhausting, but that was Bill's style.
Alan was miserable and felt he was being marginalized. And then things got a lot worse. He got cancer. One night he passed by Gates's office and overheard him talking with Steve Ballmer. What were they saying?
They were basically talking about how they were planning to dilute my share down to almost nothing. And it was really a shocking and disheartening moment for me.
And you were sick?
Well, I think I was still probably in the middle of radiation therapy.
So there's, the actions of Bill who claims to be this philanthropist, cares so much about people. And we'll see how the wording of that is constantly used to try to make him seem like such a good guy, and the things he does is such like a kind action that he's doing. But then we'll look at the deeper actions of what he's actually doing and how these things are very corrupt. He's got he's sick, he's evil, he wants depopulation. He wants to be one of the only people who him and his family and those he thinks are necessary or essential are the only ones who should be alive. Everyone else should die. And he does it in a very calm, scientific way, and people give him awards, and he goes on newscasts for this stuff. And but deep down, we're starting to see, and many people have for a long time, his true colors. Let's just listen to a little clip because this is something that we hear a lot when Bill is mentioned, that this is just a conspiracy theory.
The phrase conspiracy theorist, if you don't know, and your audience may or may not know, some of them probably do. That phrase, conspiracy theorist, is a phrase after the JFK assassination. What the CIA did at that point in time is they developed and we now know this. This is not me making this up. This has been known for a long time. This was not one of the things that we recently discovered with the exposure of some of the more classified information that's been held for decades. But the phrase conspiracy theorist was purposely designed so when anybody of influence at that time after the Kennedy murder, anybody at that time of influence would say, the government did it, they would immediately attack them. The media that existed at that time, the mainstream media, as we now know, a lot of people call it the fake news media. But at that time, they said, use that phrase and just beat them about the head and shoulders and call them a conspiracy theorist. And that has stuck.
Right.
That has stuck in our lexicon here in this country. So if I say the 2020 election was stolen, right? Well, there's no proof. There's no evidence. How many times do we hear the media say there's no evidence? There's no evidence. There's tons of evidence. And sadly, and they won't do it, though. This is where, again, this is back to the good versus evil. So those that are evil will never admit it. And they will not say they're sorry. They're not going to come in and go, well, geez, I really made a mistake.
Yeah, they never do. And then when you call them out all along the way, as we've now seen so many conspiracy theories come true, those people never come out and say, I'm sorry, we were wrong. There's no conspiracy. Bill Gates is not just the nicest guy ever. He was making money off of the vaccine research. He is connected to all these different agencies and all these weird companies that are trying to do things like block out the sun, promote vaccines to different countries, give contraceptive to different nations as like a form of, we care about these people. We're trying to bring new advancements in medicine to them. That's the kind of knowledge and the wordage that they use. And then what they're really doing is just completely stopping the population growth in that country, because no matter how much he tries to seem like he just cares about science and helping people, what he's really trying to do is reduce the population. Here's Bill responding to some of that conspiracy stuff. We see that his net worth increased by over $30 billion between 2019 and 2020, denies that the so-called conspiracy theorist that he profited from, he calls people conspiracy theorists when they claim that he profited from the pandemic and from, the jabs in general. And he's lying.
Did you feel this came out particularly during COVID and the work you were doing on for that? How do you feel when you become part of this whole kind of conspiracy theory stuff going on? Does that bother you? Does it get you at all?
Somebody coming up to me on the street, which has happened sometimes, and saying that I've chipped them and I'm following them around, as long as I'm safe, you almost have to laugh that, lady, why would I want to know where you are? I mean, really, is that how I spend my time, is tracking you?
But how do you think this stuff happens? Because it became a...
And you notice how they always make it like the most wildest claims. They don't bring up stuff like, well, it's been shown that there's definitely bad things for the heart. People who are getting the injection, bad for people's hearts. A lot of scientists who come out with that. The creator of the mRNA, one of the guys creating it, comes out and said there's evidence that it's detrimental to the heart, that specific jab in general. And he doesn't talk about those stuff. He talks about the person who comes up and says they're tracking him and putting a chip in them, and takes it to the wildest claim possible. Not like you're making money off of injecting people with stuff that is not good for them and that has negative health effects. Why are these different politicians like Kamala Harris getting fake shots on TV? We see the needle fold over. We see them getting things. There's nothing even in the shot. Why are they getting fake shots on TV if it's so healthy and so good? So not the real stuff out there, but they have to take it to the highest level to make it look like everything that these people say is false.
Like a kind of running theme during the pandemic.
On a global basis, I either started it or was...
So here we'll see, and there is some other weird connections we'll see besides this one here. What's next for our foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in particular, excited about what the next year could mean for one of the best buys in global health, as we see that word, the shots.
Profiting from it and doing all sorts of strange things. That was completely unexpected, completely making up, like saying that I profit from, or that vaccine, instead of saving millions of lives, actually are bad for children. That's what actually are bad for children.
Here's a chart. I'm sure he still has, shares in Microsoft and all that, but you can see his net worth going up and down. But between 2019 and 2022, man, massive jump. What was part of that? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, heavily connected, heavily invested, even in the post we saw just now in 2019. One of the best investments is shots. And then what do we see? Worldwide shot demand through the roof. So yeah, he did profit off of that, and it looks like he even had foreknowledge of it. Now we know for sure this thing was created in a lab and released to the population, and it wasn't from someone who ate a bat in a different country. I mean, it's insane that we know that for sure. No one even says the bat thing anymore, and no one's investigating no one is trying to bring anyone to justice. Well, it's the same reason why these guys it's the same people involved in these whole things. Why we're hearing, well, there's no files. There's no files with these guys. We don't know what happened. We gave you all the information we did, even though we said we had tens of thousands of videos that no one could see. There's no evidence of anybody. Well, it turns out more release of the files. Well, when are we going to get the information about who created this thing and how it got released on the population, destroyed businesses, killed people? Are we going to get the information? No, the same people are connected to both, for sure. That's why we're not getting the truth on this stuff years and years and years later.
Like saying that I profit from, so that instead of saving millions of lives, actually are bad for children. That's a total reversal. And the fact that people needed a simple explanation during the pandemic.
In a way, you became victim there to something that's happening to a lot of people in politics now, which is the whole fake news thing and the power of a conspiracy theory to take hold. Do you have within the organization people who are actually thinking about how you deal with stuff like that? Or do you just accept it as part of the baggage of being a very wealthy, very powerful, well-known person?
Well, it's gone down somewhat with the end of the pandemic, but like there were a few malaria cases that showed up in the U.S. and people were saying, okay, that's me doing that. Or, I own 1/4000th of the farmland in the U.S. and people have some view that somehow connects that. Yeah, 1/4000th of the farmland. But what can you do with 1/4000th share? At least in my math, I have a hard time pulling off a conspiracy unless you get up to at least 2 or 3 4,000ths.
I don't know. I don't know the exact details of that. I'd be curious to see exactly what that is, because even if that could get into a lot of different technicalities with what land he owns, where he owns it. Does he have water rights on these lands that go to other farms? Is he leaking, whatever chemicals he's spraying on this stuff that's going into the water supply that is now being used on these other farms? Just because he says, as we've seen, he's obviously making statements that are not true, saying he didn't make any money from what happened in 2020. So yeah, and as we can see with everything else, obviously, can we put it past the guy? No, we for sure can't. So just because he makes that 1/4000th claim, there could be other things connected to that mean he could actually really affect a much larger, swath of farmland. Here's a little bit. There's one clip from Bill in this, but just to kind of show you, these are these same people, these same people on these lists, or these same people involved in this stuff, or at least have knowledge of it, could get the files, could release the info, could bring forth investigations into what happened in 2020, and they're just not. This is what they're actually doing in their time with their time.
Also techniques that people are reluctant to talk about, but where you reduce the warming through having particles, what's called solar radiation management.
The oceans have absorbed some carbon, but there's plenty of room for more carbon absorption by the oceans. We might do that deliberately by pumping CO2 into the ocean.
So there's another one of those things, they say that they're so upset with CO2, and then now they want to be pumping it into the ocean. They want to create taxes, not allow us to eat red meat or reduce it greatly, stop cow farming, but then now they want to be pumping CO2 into the oceans. I mean, we got to see the doublespeak from these people.
Stuff in the upper atmosphere to stop all the sunlight getting down to the ground, or by seeding more low clouds, which is what that would do, so that more sunlight is reflected back into space.
We might try and manipulate the ocean system to play with life in the ocean, shown on this figure here.
Gates and his team plan to use a fleet of ships to cool warm surface water by mixing it with colder water from greater depths. They hope this will sap energy from growing storms, leading to weaker, less devastating hurricanes.
I mean, are we the science people or are we the idiots? Which one do we want to be?
Yeah, he's obviously up to a lot of very strange things. Even here, why would he use this type of wordage? He said this for a long time, just kind of said it in the open. Maybe he's part of one of these groups where they think they have to say these things in the open to be let off the hook from the things they do. Well, they'll find out later. They definitely won't be let off the hook for any of that stuff.
An epidemic, either naturally caused or intentionally caused, is the most likely thing to cause, say, 10 million excess deaths, either naturally caused or intentionally caused.
So, these are the types of things he's saying, and these types of events, either naturally or not naturally caused, created, not naturally caused. That's exactly these things, what they're creating these things, just like they did in 2020, that we know that now for a complete fact. It shows no evidence of it being naturally mutated. And then not only that, but we knew the survival rate was way higher than it actually was. Again, businesses, lives destroyed, the respiratory thing. They knew that these respirators were bad. They continue to be using them for a long time. The double speak on everything else that they were saying at the time. You don't need a mask. Now you do. Now you actually should wear two. Fauci putting on 2 masks on TV. Again, multiple politicians and people like this online. We saw videos of them getting fake shots, the needles folding over, no liquid in the thing, and bribing people in New York City with burgers and fries if you get the shot. I mean, these are the types of people, and he's at the head of it. And he's definitely involved in a lot of very strange stuff. And we can see here with what he's doing in Kenya with the Gates Foundation, even more evidence that this guy, Mr. Gates, is up to some very strange and evil stuff. UNFPA, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, committed to boost family planning in developing countries. This is from 2016, this article, but we'll see kind of where it went from here. Of course, United Nations Population Fund, all these groups. He's involved in all these worldwide globalist organizations, and they use all this language in this, like family planning supplies, organization donors, private sector. We need to help the development for the women, the girls, the urgency, accountability. It's a pivotal moment for this FP 2020 initiative. That's the type of wordage that they're always using to make it sound like everything that they do is just so amazing. They're just trying to help people out so much. But then what really is going on is revolutionizing family planning or controlling populations. Bill Gates Foundation, 8-year hormonal IUD in Africa. So the Bill Gates Foundation was been giving out tons of these IUDs, which are provided contraceptive. For 8 years, they've been giving them out in Kenya and Nigeria. And again, they use all that wordage to make it sound like, oh, they're doing all these things at such a pivotal moment for the 2020 thing. And it's just helping so many women, bringing new advanced medical knowledge to Africa and regions of Africa that are aren't getting any help. But what they're doing is they're just going into Africa with contraceptives so these women cannot be having children for 8 years. That's the real language of what's going on. Behind all the fluffy language, what's actually going on is they're just causing the Kenyan population and Nigeria to not have kids. Is that a good thing to do? Sounds pretty evil that he's trying to be so involved in controlling who can have children and who can't. Looks like this is kind of pushing back on him a little bit. Gates Foundation loses diplomatic immunity in Kenya. In a major victory for democracy, the Bill Gates oligarchy assertion of power is overturned. He's still heavily involved. Don't be confused by any means, but it looks like he's losing his absolute ability to do whatever he wants in these African countries with immunity, without just whatever at any cost, without being held to any type of standard or judgment at all. Gates Foundation withdraws host country agreement with Kenya following legal challenge and public pressure. Not to mention, all these kids in these different countries and how many of them go missing. I posted a video on my main channel, Sling and Stone, about a girl who was kept in some steel room as a slave for what. Back to this whole thing here with the files that supposedly don't exist. One of those terrible, evil situations for 10 years or something insane like that. And she was taken from the Haiti earthquake after that Haiti earthquake that happened years and years ago. Her parents died in that. One of these, UN, we're here to help. We've got these initiatives and these things coming that have to be put in, that we're putting in place. They're so amazing. One of these organizations went in, stole that girl from Haiti and brought her to America, where she was then locked into a room for 10 years and abused up to 30 times a day. So, these are the things that are involved in all of this stuff. And then when, involved in all these countries with all these underprivileged people. And turns out here he is sitting just out next to Mr. Jeffrey's plane. What exactly are these guys doing? Keep an eye on them. There's a lot of evil, and we're supposed to expose the evil works of darkness, and we will continue to. May the Lord Jesus Christ shine a light on all the darkness in the world. Thanks for watching. God bless.